I'm Mike.
And I'm Adam.
And this is Stuff and Waffle. Two friends talking about stuff, and often as not, waffling with frequent reference to Bond cars.
I've been on the internet.
Have you?
Yeah.
Well, yes. What'd you find?
Well, we better not talk about that. But I did, after that, find an interesting video on Drive Tribe this week. A certain Mr. Richard Hammond has repurchased a car from his past.
Oh, I see. I've seen the video in question, yes.
You have seen the video in question, and it's glorious.
Oh, yeah.
And it's from a manufacturer that we hold very dear to our hearts, I think it's fair to say. To quote a certain Mr. Quentin Wilson, if I may.
Please do.
Talk luxury cars, and there's one name that refuses to go away. Jaguar.
Oh God, you can see him. You can picture him.
Yes, you can. It was from his review of the XJ40.
Brilliant.
Available on YouTube. Anyway, we've been a little concerned about Jaguar for a while, have we not?
It has come up a few times, hasn't it?
It has come up a few times. We're not sure what's going on. We're not sure where they're going. We've had various announcements, but nothing seems to have happened. And I thought it'd be nice for us to kick that around. We've been threatening to do it for a while. But I thought before we come up to date, it'd be worth just a little recap of where Jaguar has come from.
Okay.
There's been a few reimaginings, a few relaunches, if you like, over the decades, and I thought it'd be nice to just sort of spin through that a little bit. So,
yeah, why not? Indeed,
I'd like to take us back to after World War II, when Sir William Lyons, who founded the company, he originally had Swallow sidecars, which became SS cars, but obviously after World War II, the name SS had
it's not going to help sales, is it?
Taken on a slightly different meaning. So he decided his company, his fledgling car company, needed a new name, and he came up with Jaguar, and that takes us into their golden era, really, the late 50s, the early 60s. Cars like the Mark II, the E-Type, the launch of the XJ in 1968. They had the C-Type and the D-Type racing cars. The coupe version of the XJ, which today is enjoying a real renaissance.
Indeed.
It's an extremely cool car at the moment. And he'd sort of very much built that kind of effortless, cool, glamorous image that I think they've always been trying to recapture with varying success over the decades.
Yeah.
But he was a very cool character. He designed a lot of the cars himself. He was very involved in the sort of evolution of each model. And it was a very cool brand. But then we move into the 1970s. They were part of British Leyland.
Yeah. So dear.
Things changed a little bit. The Series 3 XJ, the XJS, they started to gain a reputation which, frankly, they'd earned for themselves for terrible build quality, unreliability, just general good designs, but awful implementation, as indeed, of course, the whole of British Leyland.
Yes, it was not just Jag, but yes, it was a problem throughout, wasn't it?
It was a problem throughout, and it was a dark period for the brand, really. I think they were probably still quite cool, but they were a bit crap. I
think you're right. You don't have to shy away from it. We know that they were a bit crap, weren't they?
They were a bit crap, unfortunately. I mean, we all love a Series 3, but I'm not sure any of us would be stupid enough to actually buy one.
No, it's not going to be trouble-free motoring, is it? Really?
No, it really isn't. It
No.
really isn't. So then we move into the 1980s. Company was taken over by British industrialist Sir John Egan, who wrestled Jaguar out of the dead hands of British Leyland and set about quite a comprehensive revamping of both the company and the dealer network.
Mm-hmm.
He oversaw the production of the XJ22 supercar, which of course is one of your great favourites.
Oh, yes.
Not an entirely successful vehicle.
No,
but-
I mean, it's not. That was more. It was a victim of the circumstances, wasn't it?
I think it probably was. It didn't achieve what they set out to. It was more expensive than it was supposed to be.
That's it. The problem was it's everyone gushed about it, and then the market crashed, and there were no buyers, and they had to make colossal compromises, didn't they?
Yeah, absolutely, and it just wasn't what it was supposed to be. But the big thing of that era, of course, was in 1986, the launch of the XJ6, what some people call the XJ40, which was a real leap forward for them. It was miles better than the outgoing Series 3, regarded from what I've read as the best built Jaguar to that point.
Mm-hmm.
It had a lot of clever innovations on it. It had a lot of new technology. But ultimately, that period didn't really work. It came out of that period in a bit of trouble. And then it was bought, of course, by Ford in 1990 for $2.5 billion is what they paid for it. Yeah, I know. I've never heard the figure before, but I found it when I was doing this research.
I thought you were going to say £2.5.
No, $2.5 billion Ford paid for Jaguar.
Okay.
And I'm going to quote a lot of figures here, and they all come from Jaguar, so they are they are there.
The figures have been checked. Yep.
Indeed. So then we get into, again, very much another relaunch under Ford's ownership. They were very keen to establish the history and the heritage, or re-establish the heritage. But clearly they wanted Jaguar to be mass market, and clearly it made sense to use existing Ford platforms, the Mark III Mondeo for the X-Type and the Lincoln LS for the S-Type. And those cars today are kind of maligned in a lot of circles. They're seen as a low point, but clearly it made sense if they were going after mass market to use existing platforms. And the Mark III Mondeo platform, the Lincoln LS platform, were not bad. Those weren't bad cars.
No, but it spawned that thing of it's just a Mondeo in drag.
It did, and it's never ever shaken that.
No,
the S-Type doesn't suffer from that as much.
No, because people don't know what a Lincoln is.
People don't know what a Lincoln LS is. Yes, exactly, a Lincoln. But again, and of course, with the S-Type, the advertising campaign used Shirley Bassey's History Repeating, and they were.
Of course it did. Yes.
Indeed, that was a wonderful advertising campaign. Again, you can see some of those on YouTube. They're wonderful. But and the X-Type, of course, the campaign pushing the fact that it was four-wheel drive and nothing else in that class was four-wheel drive,
right?
And all that stuff. Driving in front of the snowplow and
yeah.
That one?
I do. Yeah,
having a four-wheel drive X-Type estate in front of the snowplow, and the snowplow just following in its tracks.
Very good. Oh yeah, well, it worked though.
It did work, and those were, quite successful vehicles at the time. But generally, it didn't do. I don't think anybody would say Jaguar flourished under Ford's ownership. There were numerous new versions of the XJ, the X300, the X308, but it moved the story on a bit, but it didn't do anything to help them as a premium brand. I don't think.
No, I think it didn't revolutionize it. Just like the X-Type, for instance, that opened the door for a bit of company car leasing, I'd imagine.
It certainly got it into the fleet market,
That's it.
and it did very well in the fleet market. It was very popular. It was more interesting than a Mondeo. It was less, austere than a BMW or a Mercedes. It did offer an alternative choice on a budget. It definitely had a place in the market, and the fact that you still see so many of them around shows that it's perhaps, it wasn't as bad a car as it has a reputation for being. I know I had one that wasn't particularly great, as it turned out, but there are still quite a few of them around.
There are an awful lot of them around, actually.
Yeah, there are, and they're still going. And I think as partly the Ford base, of course, because parts for it are not difficult to get.
No, that helps enormously.
Yeah, so it was a different period for Jaguar's history, but ultimately, again, the second relaunch didn't really go to plan, and Ford sold Jaguar to Tata of India in 2008 for $2.3 billion. So Tata paid less than Ford did 18 years earlier.
Okay. And timing-wise, with it being 2008, did they sell it before or after the financial crash?
During, I think.
Yes.
I think so. Sales. It was that time where Ford worldwide had hit serious problems, because for the decade before that, if you recall, they were just buying everything that moved.
Yeah.
They had Aston Martin, Volvo, Mazda, Jaguar. They were just Land Rover. They were just buying everything.
Yeah.
And 2008 was the year that they got rid of it all.
Yeah. Cut your losses and all that.
Cut your losses. This isn't working. Our luxury division has failed. Aston Martin are on their arse. Jaguar are the same. Let's just cut and run here. So sold to Tata for $2.3 billion. So more or less what it was worth 20 years before. They put in a new boss, Ralph Spieth, who was from BMW, and he signed off a new rear-wheel drive platform called D7, which was the platform that the X350 aluminium-bodied XJ was built on.
Okay.
So although the X350 XJ looked more or less the same as the outgoing X308, underneath it was a very different car. The first car in Jaguar's history to be all aluminium.
They made a song and dance about that, didn't they?
They did. It wasn't the first time they'd used aluminium, actually, because bits of the E-Type were aluminium. The clamshell bonnet was aluminium, I believe, because that was the only way they could make it. It was such a complicated shape.
Yeah.
So they built this new D7 platform, which cost them $1.5 billion to develop this platform, which Tata paid for.
Okay.
Ian Callum came on board. He came up with a whole new design language, starting with the reskinning of the S-Type into the XF. The XF, the Series 1 XF, is not the revolutionary new car that it looks like. It was basically just a reskinned S-Type. It had the same engines. I didn't realize that until recently.
I didn't.
It had the same engines. It was the same, more or less the same chassis. It was effectively the S-Type with a more modern body and interior on it. Used the same 2.7 twin turbo diesel and the 4.2 litre V8 that was used in the S-Type. The 3-litre V6 petrol was there as well. So the Series 1, yes, it looked very different, and it certainly looked more modern and more up to date. It had more up to date infotainment, all that kind of stuff. But it was just really a reskinned S-Type. But it moved things forward.
It was a clever bit of packaging, that, because no one gave a toss what was underneath. They were all...
Yeah, it worked, didn't it?
They were all
it worked.
gushing over the visuals.
It was a very cost-effective relaunch, that one, because, he made it look so different and so much more modern, even though it was based on a car they'd been making for 12 years. So they discontinued the X-Type in 2009. It was not immediately replaced. That came later. S-Type became the XF. The Series 2 XF, which came a bit later, was an entirely new car. The Series 2 XF, which is the one that I had, is a very different car to the Series 1, even though it was only a fairly minor facelift. Underneath, it was a very different car. New series of engines, 2.2 and 3-litre diesels, and the 4-litre or 4.2 litre to begin with V8, and then later a 5-litre supercharged V8 in the R version of the XF. He then did the new XJ in 2010, which again was an entirely new car, and is today, I think, still quite a controversial design. There's a lot of people who don't like it.
I really like it.
I really like it. I think it's aging very nicely.
Yeah, it's tremendous thing. Enormous, but tremendous.
Oh, absolutely massive. If you thought the X350 was big, the X, whatever that one is, X351, I think, it is massive.
It is a big car.
Absolutely massive. But I like it, and it's aging very nicely. You can get a really tidy one of those now for $5 or $6 grand.
Bloody hell.
Yeah. I had a look around at sort of prices of what they're doing at the moment, and you won't get an R or a Super Sports for that, but you'll get a Portfolio, 3-litre diesel, for $5-6 grand now. A really tidy one, low mileage.
I got no way to put it. It's that big.
I'd love one, but what are you going to do with it? I mean, I struggled with the Model S. It's bigger than a Model S.
Yeah, it's not going to happen, is it?
It's not going to fit anywhere. You'll never be able to park it. So then, of course, came the launch of the F-Type, which was kind of a replacement for the outgoing XK, which was, I believe, discontinued in the mid 2010s. I want to say 2012, 2013, something like that. I think the XK was finally went.
It sounds about right.
And I don't have that date, but the bringing in the F-Type, both as a coupe and a convertible, again moved things forward. It was part of the new design language. And then finally in 2014 came the XE, which was kind of the replacement for the X-Type, the small sports saloon.
Jag, yes.
The baby Jag, yeah. That was touted as the most important car in Jaguar's history when it launched in 2014. They had high hopes for the XE. High hopes for the XE. It was going priced to go up against the BMW 3 Series and the Mercedes C-Class. That was an important car. We'll come on to what happened to it, but I know one person who leased one, and that's it. I seriously considered one for a while, but went with the XF instead. The XF Sport Brake. Correct choices, I think we've established. One of our neighbours here has an XES, which I've mentioned before, which was the 3-litre V6 version. It was the hot one. Certainly looks nice, but was not an entirely successful vehicle. Also at that time, after much debate, people saying, "Oh, do they really need to do one?" They launched the first SUV.
The F-Pace.
The F-Pace, shortly followed by the smaller E-Pace. Have you ever actually seen one in the real world? I'm not sure I ever have. The
Couple of
E-Pace.
times, actually. Couple of times, yeah.
Yeah, that's all though.
Yeah, that's...
The E-Pace did not do any business at all. The F-Pace, however, was the most successful car of that period. By far. It outsold the rest of the range by several orders of magnitude. It was a massively successcill car. The F-Pace kept Jaguar afloat for quite a while.
That's what's wrong with society.
There you go. Then, of course, we had the launch of the I-Pace EV, which I was staggered to note is now 5 years old.
Well, you say that, but how many years did we have to wait until there were actually ones on the road?
Yeah, true, and places to charge them.
Yes.
That was a car I always got the impression that they put on sale and then continued to develop it because it was not ready when it launched. It absolutely was not ready. There were no chargers for it. It wouldn't charge at its full rate to begin with. The software was buggy and slow. It kept having to go back into dealers to be updated. There were a lot of problems with the I-Pace. They were so desperate to launch an EV. And I don't think it's a bad EV, but it was launched before it was ready.
Yeah, I mean, it's done all right, isn't it?
It's done all right. You do see them around. Yeah, you do. It's done all right. But generally, the range as a whole, whilst it was quite well received by the press...
but didn't it win some sort of Car of the Year award?
Yeah, it won several, but nobody can figure out why.
Well, because... No, I don't. Well, no, that'll be libelous if I say that. So you know what I'm thinking.
I know what you're thinking. Yeah, I know what you're thinking. Would you have an I-Pace over a Model 3? I don't know. Anyway, I have been in an I-Pace, and actually it was really comfortable, and the driving position was lovely. But probably of a Model 3. Anyway, generally, in terms of sales, that relaunch didn't really work either. No. They failed to entice buyers out of the German rivals, and the brand was once again carried by Land Rover. Sales of the Range Rover and the Defender carried Jaguar. It showed again and these are Jaguar's own figures. They predicted the XE would sell 63,000 cars in the year of its launch in 2014. It peaked. It didn't do anything like that in the first year. It peaked in 2016 at 43,000. That's the most they ever sold in a 12-month period of the XE.
That's not a lot, is it?
It's not a lot. That's worldwide.
Yeah.
The F-Pace was the big seller with 72,000 units sold in 2017 and actually led their biggest sales year ever in 2018 when the company as a whole worldwide sold 180,000 cars. But their target was 1 million cars.
Wow.
Yeah. That's what it needed. That's what it needed to do.
Not even hitting the 20% mark.
No. So relaunch number 3 has also failed.
Oh dear.
So last year, let's talk about 2021.
Okay. An awkward year for car sales in general.
An awkward year for car sales in general, and you have to colour it with that knowledge. Nobody was doing well, except possibly Tesla, because they were selling online and continued to deliver cars even during lockdown, which nobody else was doing. But leaving that aside, in 2021, worldwide, Jaguar sold 86,000 cars.
That's not enough, is it?
The XF in the UK sold less than 1,000.
Wow.
The XE was the same. It was a similar number, 900 and something or other.
Christ.
In the UK, that's not worldwide. That's
but
just in
still,
the UK. The XF was outsold in the UK by the Jeep Wrangler, according to Auto Trader. The XE, which was supposed to be the mass market fleet car, was outsold by the Mercedes S-Class.
Oh yeah,
which is very much not a mass market fleet
every man's car. That one, yeah.
Yes, exactly. Again, according to figures from Auto Trader. So neither of their frontline cars were selling at all. In the last quarter of 2021, worldwide, according to Jaguar's own figures, they sold 14,000 cars.
Bloody hell.
So sales to the end of last year, which is the most up-to-date figures we have, were plummeting, I think is the only word to use. The end of 2021 was their worst quarter since 2013, which was the year they said they wanted to be Britain's BMW and set the target of 1 million cars a year.
Oh, for God's sake.
And they sold 14,000 cars worldwide.
Oh dear.
It's nothing.
It's dire, isn't it? That's what it is.
That's the only word for it. And the silly thing is, they're not bad cars.
No, I suppose not. They're not.
And you think
you don't hear horror stories about it.
You don't hear horror stories. I was very happy with my XF, which ironically was a 2013 car. But it hasn't, for whatever reason, whether it was marketing or people didn't like the design, or people said, well, yeah, I could buy this, which is trying to be a BMW, or I could just go and buy a BMW. I don't know what the reason was, but clearly the end of 2021 was a total failure. There's no other way to dress that up.
Okay.
So
where are we going then? That's the problem.
Coming up to date, have a quick swig because I've been talking a lot again.
Yeah, wet the whistle.
Got to do that. So, in 2020, former Renault executive Thierry Bellor took over the lead of Jaguar.
Oh, yeah, I do remember. Yeah.
And kicked off the fourth relaunch in the company's history. Now, I read some of the things that he said at the time.
Okay.
Reading between the lines, I think it's very much, right, we're not going to try and beat the Germans at their own game anymore. We're looking at the future. We're looking at Tesla. And we are going to go all electric by 2025. None of the current model line will be replaced. For the next 3 years, the current model lineup will be just left to slowly decline. XF, XE, none of those will be replaced. XJ has already been discontinued. There may be minor revisions, tweaks here and there, but there will be no new models until 2025, is what they've said.
Okay, well, they're certainly sticking to that.
Yes, they do seem to be sticking to that. That includes the I-Pace, interestingly, which is scheduled for being discontinued before 2025, actually.
Okay.
So by 2025, they actually won't have a lineup, which is ballsy.
As car companies go, that's hardcore, not selling cars.
That is, isn't it? No new models and no electric, which is, let's bear in mind, the only area of car sales that is growing at the moment.
Oh, dearie me. Right.
So we know, and we've mentioned this before, that there was to be an electric XJ.
Well, yeah, we know full well that made it quite far into its life.
Pretty much ready,
Yeah.
but there was a problem.
Go on then.
It was based on their new MLA platform, which stood for Modular Longitudinal Architecture.
That sounds unnecessarily poncy.
Yeah, that that platform, which has now been cancelled, was cancelled because they realised that they had gone the wrong way. That platform was designed to accommodate not only an EV drivetrain, but a piston drivetrain. It was designed to allow them to continue producing petrol and diesel XJs alongside an electric XJ.
Okay.
They felt that what they'd ended up with was too compromised. When you look at the rest of the industry, you look at cars like the Model S, the Mercedes EQS, cars like that are appearing fast now. They felt having a compromised XJ where neither the EV drivetrain nor the piston drivetrain were going to be quite good enough because they'd shoehorned them into one platform.
Yeah.
They just felt like they'd be playing catch up from day one, and that they were going to launch a deeply compromised car. And they felt, given that the cost, they spent a lot on developing this MLA platform, and they just thought with the speed that manufacturers like Tesla are driving the EV industry, and that is a hell of a pace, that they'd just be lagging behind and it would be an embarrassing model. So they took the decision to cut their losses and not put it into production. So it's partly that they couldn't afford it, but it's mainly because they realized what they'd built wasn't really good enough.
Okay.
It was too compromised because they were going to try and carry on making petrol versions as well.
Well, that was a good use of money, wasn't it?
Well, there you go. It's and it's been suggested that is why we don't have an all-electric Range Rover, because that was going to be based on this MLA platform.
Same platform, right?
Yep. So the new boss, leaving the electric XJ aside, the new boss has recognised they need another change of direction. Clearly, they're not going to try and compete with the Germans. They're going to go all electric by 2025, which is good. I mean, what else can they do, really?
Well, yeah, there's not a lot of choice in the matter if you're making like radical new cars that don't exist yet.
Yeah,
there's no point in making petrol ones for 5 years.
No, quite. And continuing diesel engine manufacturing, I mean, that's just a road to nowhere, isn't it? It's going to leave you as just a dinosaur. And I know it's difficult for these legacy car manufacturers. They have so much invested in legacy car manufacturing, but they're not going to be able to sell those cars in an alarmingly short amount of time now. So, depending on the government, of course, I mean, we don't now, it seems, have a very environmentally aware government, but we do now have an extremely environmentally aware king. So,
yeah, I don't see any of the time frames being put back or anything.
I don't think they can be, because the rest of the world isn't gonna, well, the rest of the Western world isn't going to change.
No, I don't see any of that.
So if you can't sell them in Europe and you can't sell them in the US, really, what is the point? You're going to sell them in the UK? Well, the figures we've just looked at, they sold less than 1,000 XFs in the UK in the 3 months to the end of 2021. So what is the point?
Quite.
If that's all you're going to sell, then you're done.
Yeah, you're dead in the water there, aren't you?
Yeah. So the plan, as it stands currently, is that from 2025, an entirely new model lineup.
Okay.
All electric, going massively up market. The new design director who replaced Ian Callum, Jerry McGovern, has said, "We are going to make Jaguar, and I quote, wonderful again."
Okay.
He wants to capture what made Sir William Lyon's Jaguar great. He wants to look at what made it good back then, cars like the Mark II and the E-Type, but also look forward. And he's keen that they don't do the whole S-Type history repeating thing again. Don't go into full National Trust mode.
No, that would be a colossal mistake.
Look forward, but no more following the German model lineups, a completely new lineup, and compete directly with Porsche and Bentley.
Right, okay.
No Jaguars will cost less than £100,000. Low volume, exclusive, a true luxury experience, and this is a critical detail, no more platform sharing with Land Rover.
Okay.
Now that's key. That's absolutely key. What they're doing, they're developing an entirely new platform for the EV cars. It's called Panthera, which is named after the genus that all the big cats are members of: lions, tigers, leopards, jaguars. They're all members of the Panthera family. That's where the name comes from.
Okay.
So the Panthera platform, now developing an entirely new platform, is blinking expensive. So they have tied up with a manufacturer in Canada called Magna, an engineering company. I believe they might be the parent company of Magna Steyr in Austria, who make cars.
Isn't that what I-Pace is made there, isn't it?
That's where I-Pace is made, and I believe E-Pace is made there as well.
Okay.
They're a low-volume car manufacturer that works for OEMs who want to produce kind of sidelines, lower-volume cars that it isn't worth them making in their own factories.
Yep.
Which, of course, I-Pace was. But this is with the Canadian engineering company. They are designing the platform. They're also putting up a load of the money, so they will partly own. They will partly own the platform, but there will be no sharing of this platform with Land Rover. It's bespoke to Jaguar.
Yep.
Which means, of course, Jaguar is self-contained, and it could be sold. If Tata were to decide to flog it, and there has been talk of that over the next last 8 or 9 months, they can sell Jaguar as a going concern with its own platform, all self-contained, ready to go.
Well, it seems, from what you've described, it does seem actually like something that you would almost be interested in buying then.
Well, indeed.
It's got things going for it for once.
It's got an entirely new platform, a new model lineup, all electric, looking to the future, but with the heritage of the name. New designer. The other thing they're doing, which is different, and again, the other reason they needed to help somebody pay for it. Normally, car manufacturers will develop or purchase a platform and then design their cars around that. This is being done the other way round. Jerry McGovern and his team are designing the cars, and then they're engineering the platform to fit those cars.
Okay.
So it's the other way about. But of course, the EV platform lends itself to that so much better than a piston platform. The whole roller skate platform, as it's become known. And as others have said, could this be the rebirth of the old coach building companies, where you buy your skateboard platform, which has got your motors and your batteries and your control systems and all that on it, and you take it to a coach builder, and they build your interior, and they build your body, and fit the car that you want around the platform.
Yeah, so that is cool, wouldn't it?
That's what they're doing. So hopefully, this 4th or 5th, depending on how you count them, relaunch will go somewhere. I'd hate to see Jaguar go.
It would be awful. I mean, you say we've got this. This is incoming. Have they said what the range will be?
Nope.
Right.
They've said nothing. We've seen no designs. They've not indicated what the range will be, merely that it will be a range of cars and it will not be the same as what's gone before. But you have to think there's bound to be a couple of saloons, a sports car, an SUV. I mean, that's what everyone does. That's what everyone wants to buy. Hopefully they'll stick an estate car in there. That would be nice. The XF Sport Brake has been very popular amongst the small group of people who are buying Jaguars.
Yeah, people like that. People liked the X-Type estate, didn't they?
They did. I did. Still do.
There's room for it, I think.
We know very little more than that. We've not seen anything. It's all still happening now, and obviously they've given themselves the deadline of 2025 to have all this stuff hit the market. Let's hope it's good, and they land on the market, and blow it apart. That would be wonderful.
That would be nice. I mean, we can probably, thinking about it, we can probably gauge it, can't we? Because you said their intention was to go against Porsche and Bentley.
Yeah, that was who they were aiming at. Yeah.
So you think, what's that going to be? Big SUV, small SUV?
Yeah, true.
It's going to be, like you say, a saloon of some sort.
Well, if they've got to be looking at the Taycan.
Yeah, they've got to be looking at that. Then you got to think there's going to be a GT car because they're looking at the Continental.
Yeah, that's true.
That's true. Sports car. So yeah, sports car, GT, saloon, small SUV, big SUV.
But of course, with an EV platform, because it's inherently a simpler thing, you can kind of do anything with it. Which is, I always was puzzled by why they did the I-Pace when they, I know old Callum sits there and said, "Oh, it was so liberating. We could do anything with this EV platform." Well, then why did you do that?
Doesn't make a huge amount of sense. I wonder then with this new one, do you reckon if they do go down the route of, say, for example, doing a big SUV, if they're going to be ultimately separated from Land Rover, do you think they'd make a Range Rover rival?
I wouldn't be at all surprised. I mean, the F-Pace sort of is.
I don't think it's big enough, though, is it?
Not quite. But then there are several different sizes of Range Rover these days. So,
well, there are.
But if you're talking about the big Range Rover, the proper one, which itself needs to go electric, and they may not have a platform now.
No, that's it.
It begs the question of what they're going to do, unless Jaguar would be prepared to license it to them rather than just give it to them if they're not part of the same company anymore. Or they go straight to Magna and do something, say, well, can we license this platform from you as well? Depends what kind of deal Jaguar have done with Magna, whether they've got exclusivity over it. If they're paying for a big chunk of it, I would imagine they will want exclusivity over it.
I would have thought so, yeah.
Depending on how many, I suppose, other manufacturers might be willing to stump up some cash to pay for it. Whether anybody else is going to be enticed in with them. But the intention clearly seems to be to have a hard separation between Jaguar and Land Rover. And the only reason for that, surely, is that they want to sell Jaguar.
Yeah.
Land Rover still makes money. Jaguar does not.
We've touched on that before when we said, "Oh, right, well, why isn't there an electric Range Rover?" And then go, well, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really matter because when they make a new Range Rover, the Range Rover buyers will buy it.
Yeah, that's the thing, isn't it? Regardless of what they should be doing.
Yeah, it doesn't matter what powers it; they'll just buy it.
Yeah, they will because it's a Range Rover and people love Range Rovers. That's just a fact, isn't it? So, yeah, maybe they're not as fussed about it, although they've got the same deadline as everybody else.
Yeah, they do. I mean, they've said it's coming. It's just well, when?
They're obviously working on something, but they're not working on it with Jaguar, unless Jaguar are going to check on the platform that the XJ was going to be built on. But the platform that Jaguar sidelined because they said it was too compromised. But maybe that's okay for Land Rover. They will want to continue selling a petrol and a diesel version. If they want to phase in an EV version, then a platform that supports both might be just what they're looking for. So maybe the fact that the electric XJ we think may have been unmothballed in the last few weeks, from what Mr. Porter.
Oh yeah, there were some tweets going around, weren't there?
Yeah, maybe they're not testing it to resurrect the electric XJ. Maybe they're resurrecting it to test the electric Range Rover.
Yeah, that's it. Because I mean, they have promised one.
Well, they've got to do one, haven't they?
Yeah, and they didn't put like a particularly long time frame on, didn't they? Say a couple of years.
Couple of years. Yeah, they did 2024. And I know you say, well, yes, they could keep producing petrol ones, and people will buy them. Well, not after 2030, they won't, because they won't be allowed to sell
No, they won't. But if they've got some knocking about, they'll milk it all the way up until the cut-off, I think.
Oh, there'll be... How many manufacturers are going to be registering cars like mad on the 31st of December?
That's it. They'll be
2029.
All pre-registered and bargains on the forecourt.
Oh, they're going to... Yeah.
Quentin Wilson, if he was still doing that bit on Top Gear, would be going off his tits.
Oh, he would. They're going to be everywhere.
Yeah.
There you go. So...
yeah. Well, okay. I mean, I think...
So it's a sad story, but with a glimmer of hope for the future, I think.
Yeah, you said, well, if it succeeds, and I think it's got the potential to. We're not going to be seeing them on every street corner, are we?
No, we're not. Jaguars are not going to be for the people they've been for before, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
They are going to be very expensive cars, but if that's what they need to do to survive, we'll see. And probably, to be fair, rules out them doing a small saloon and an estate, perhaps. I don't know. Mind you, the Taycan estate's 100 grand. So,
yeah, people seem to be buying those. So
yeah, they do. So maybe that's okay. Let's hope the Panthera platform is everything that we hope it is.
Yeah, and we've in the grand scheme of things, we've not got that long to wait now, have we? I mean,
no. I mean, we're going to start seeing bits of it, surely.
I'd hope so, because we're going to need.
They want to crank the marketing machine up.
That's it. I mean, I think what we're going to have, it's got to be sort of towards the beginning of next year. Then that we're going to have to start seeing at least sort of teasers of what Jag are going to be.
I would have thought so. Yeah, try and get people on board. Try and save the loyal buyers that they've got, because they do have a great following.
Yeah,
people are very passionate about Jaguar.
Yeah, like you say, I mean, the numbers are low, but people are buying them.
Yeah,
you at least need to keep that lot happy, and then build from there, don't you?
Yeah. Well, even if you're selling 14,000 cars a year, if those 14,000 cars are a minimum 100 each, you can afford to sell fewer.
Yeah. Like you say, if you're chucking out 100 grand minimum cars, not an issue at that sort of volume.
And if they've got their platform development costs down by involving somebody else, then it could work.
It could. I think they've got their head screwed on right.
I hope so.
Because on the face of it, it doesn't seem like it, but from you actually
not up till now,
no, because now you've actually read what's happening, and I confess to being too lazy to have done any of that.
Well, it's good. I like to inform.
Yeah, there's a glimmer of hope, because without that knowledge, it just seems like it's on its arse.
Yeah, it does, and it is.
Yeah.
There's no getting around that. But they have a plan.
Okay.
And they're working on it, and it's a plan that will fit them into the future of auto manufacturing. And well, let's hope it works.
That's it. Watch this space, and I'm assuming we'll come back to it when we got some news.
I certainly will be watching this very carefully. I count myself as a loyal Jaguar fan, so yeah, I want to see. I want to see what's coming.
Well, I think that's probably enough of that for this week. Check us out on all the various social medias and things. Thank you very much for listening.